George, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here talking to you. I'm going to tear you a new one. How dare you entertain me consistently since I was 13 years old? I'm going to get to a question for you in a second, George, but first I want to tell a little story about the first time I met George. I was at the Time 100 dinner, and somebody came over to me, and George, you were there too, and someone came over to me and said, George Lucas is here, which got me very excited. And then the person said, George would like to meet you. And it was so incomprehensible to me that George Lucas would want to meet me that I said, George who? He said, George Lucas. And I went, oh, shit, of course. And so that feeling has not changed for me. I can't believe that the film and sci-fi geek that I am gets to sit here on stage with you and ask you some really cutting questions for the next hour about your life and career. George, what's it like to be George Lucas? Is it good?
It's okay. I love making movies. I never really wanted to make theatrical films. I wanted to make more experimental films. Back in the olden days, in the 60s when I grew up,
in Modesto, California,
nobody ever knew who the directors of movies were. There were no fan magazines, and there were no TV shows dedicated to film or anything. You just got to do your job, and that was it. And just as I started making films, then suddenly a lot of magazines came out, People Magazine, all that kind of stuff. So suddenly the whole thing got much bigger. And of course then later with the internet, it got even bigger. And that part of it is, I'm not a fan of celebrity. I would rather skip that part, but I guess I can't.
You're not a fan of celebrity. You're one of the most famous directors in the world.
It's, for a long time, I didn't, I didn't go to big parties, I don't do all that stuff, I'm not out.
You dress really glitzy.
Yeah.
You're ready for the runway all the time. That's what you know about.
I only have one pair of Levi's, one pair of sneakers. Those have been with me since I was in high school. This shirt is new. Yes. But, in the beginning, I didn't go to anything, but there wasn't that much to go to anyway. But they would say, well, I was a recluse, I was Howard Hughes like, because I'd never really show up at these things where they have photo ops and all that.
And you saved your own urine in jars.
Yeah.
But okay, let's talk about growing up in the olden days. You didn't think about being a theatrical director, but you actually wanted to be a race car driver, didn't you?
Yeah, that's where I started. And I worked out hard.
How does that influence your work? Like, where do I see in your work a race car driving? Well, certainly destroying the Death Star. That going down the canyon there. Is that?
I like speed. So,
would you shoot
my first
people
film,
in the cars in front of you, like they do in your movies?
My first film had race cars in it. PHS. Mm-hmm. My second film had a lot of old vintage cars and racing in it. That was American Beauty. And Star Wars had hot rods only that flew in space.
I know you're not. You're not working on the episode 7, and I'm not here to talk about episode 7. But I would like to ask: are you looking forward to finally seeing a Star Wars film?
Like what?
Are you looking forward to finally seeing a Star Wars film?
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I regretted doing Star Wars is I never got to see it. When the big ship came over and everything, told them I've seen this 100 times.
Right. Spoiler alert, I made this.
I never got to have that thrill. And this time, it'll be very thrilling because they're doing a kind of a different story. And so I don't know what the story is. I don't know anything about it.
How are you going to dress up as your favorite character? Because I'm going with George Lucas.
You gotta get your hair to go away, Brandon.
All right. Okay.
Girls really like that part when your hair goes.
When your hair goes gray?
Yeah, so don't worry about it.
Okay. Great. You started off making films at a young age. How old were you when you first started making films?
I was 20.
Okay.
I'm not like those other guys. I'm not like Marty and Steven and all the guys that grew up making movies. I grew up wanting to race cars. And
why didn't you keep doing that?
Because I had a really bad accident, which sort of knocked some sense into me. I almost died, and I sort of re-looked at the whole thing. I was only 18. And I looked at things and said, yeah, maybe this isn't the career path for me. But I still had all my friends were race drivers.
Were you track racing or were you drag racing?
No, I was just driving. I was racing home after going to the library to do my term paper, which was a week late. And it was a week before I was going to graduate. And, you know, I made a left-hand turn into a marble driveway, which was a road, which was about half a mile long. And some guy plowed into me about 90 miles an hour. And by all rights, I should have been killed, but I wasn't. You know. So I said, well, maybe there's a reason that I was saved, and maybe I'll go back to school. And once I got to college, I found social sciences. I found anthropology and psychology and a bunch of things that I was really interested in. So I went that route, and then and again, no interest in film. I mean, I was interested. I wanted to go to art center in LA and become an illustrator or a photographer. But I was doing a lot of photography after my accident with my friends who were racing cars. But so academically, I found something I actually liked a lot. And but a friend of mine, this was junior college, so I had to go to a real college. And I was going to go to San Francisco State and study anthropology and get a degree in it. And he was going to USC, and this is a friend I'd grown up with since I was like 3 years old. And he was going to business school and said, oh, come on, come to USC. What will I do? And he said, well, I got like a photography school there. And I said, oh, well, he said, you'll love it. It's easier than PE. And I said, okay, and I got down there, and it wasn't a photography school, it was a cinematography school, but it wasn't actually a cinematography school, it was a cinema school. And I said, what? You mean you can go to college to learn to make movies? This is insane. But my first semester there, I took history and I had one class in animation. And in my animation class, I gave them a little exercise to prove that I knew how to operate an animation camera. But I turned that, they gave me 1 minute film, so I made a 1 minute movie. Added sound to it, the whole thing.
What was the movie?
A little film called Look at Life. It was photographs from Look magazine and Life magazine that done in a very fast montage that at that point in time nobody had ever seen before. So it ended up winning all kinds of festivals and all the students were crazy. And I said, hey, I know how to do this. Well,
that was based on your experience. Would you know, if a young filmmaker comes to you, would you recommend that people who are interested in making films go to a cinema school, or is that like what YouTube is now?
Well, for me,
just go try to make your own stuff. No, seriously, like just go out and do your own stuff, make your own mistakes, and do it publicly.
It's very, very different today than it was then. You got to remember, if you wanted to see old movies, you couldn't. They didn't exist. Yeah. 2 o'clock in the morning, old movies. corporate.
As it turns out, what's great is people eventually die.
Standing there with a large camera, and the corporation said, well, who are going to get to make these movies? And they said, well, there's film schools. After we go to law schools, we go to medical schools, we do this. Why don't we just go to a film school and get some filmmakers? And so the whole industry was thrown into an upheaval. And that's sort of in the late 60s. And a lot of us, my gang, the people that I went to school with, I said, we were there because we loved movies. We didn't care whether we had a future. All we said, this is a chance for us to make movies, let's make as many as we can before we get thrown out.
So, who were the people, you're talking about the mid-1960s and some of those?
Yeah, you got Martin Scorsese, Brian De Palma,
Making movies in the mid-60s, you thought, that's the direction I want to go. That's somebody doing something new.
I still wanted to make experimental films. I grew up in San Francisco. I mainly went to films like Penn Cinema, very experimental kind of things. I was very fascinated with experimental filmmaking. And what happened in
George, I'll never get to say this again. May the force be with you.
experimental film. Yeah, and we're non-linear, no plot, no characters. And that was very fascinating. When I thought that's real cinema, that's the art of movement. And I was, fanatic about it. So I just always get in trouble with my prerequisites. This is a real film. And
What is a real film? Something that actually had a recognizable plot.
no, well, he was making these screenplays.
Right, and you didn't want to film one.
Film doesn't have that. The film is all about motion. And so, and school, that's what I made, and I was very successful at it. And, but then, I got a scholarship to study, at the two studios. One was Columbia with Carl Foreman, and I caused a lot of trouble with him because he's the hard board student who makes behind-the-scenes movies. One of the students went to UCLA and said, I'm going to do one about the director. And the other one said, I'm going to do one about the producer, Carl. I'm going to do one about you. And another one was a little more adventurous and said, I'm going to do one about the wrangler. And he came to me and I said, how about you do one about the debtor? You can't do that. And that's what I'm going to do. I said, I'll include the film company in it, but I'm just doing a kind of phone call, a little abstract movie about the debtor. We fought for a month. And it was getting close to the end. And we said, okay, do whatever you want. But,
And that film became Indiana Jones.
that's okay. Lieutenant Gold, another giant hit. I'm a building your bird on. Some kind of thing was up there. Has been sold to seminars, and they were doing a movie. The whole studio was empty. All the people have left. Jack Warner had left, and they were only doing one movie on the backlog. They said, we can't send you the story department. We can't send you here. We can't send you there. And but we do have a movie, and we'll let you watch the movie. And then basically, we're standing on a set watching a big movie. I said, I just did that. Only I still did it because of the fact that I was making a movie. But what happened ultimately is, excuse me again.
Have some water, it's very smart.
Smart. Yeah. Well, let's make them smarter.
It will, or else you have to sue them.
But the director of that movie was Francis Colbert. One of his first names was Phineas Rainbow. And we were, I was 24 years old with a beard, and he was 28 years old with a beard and long hair. So,
How did things turn out for
he
him?
went to UCLA.
How did things turn out for him? Did it work out for him?
Well, that's a long story. It did work out. Because we became friends on that movie. I was going to go to the animation department, and because there wasn't anybody there, I said, well, I got some short pieces of film, and I'll get the animation canvas and I'll make a movie. And so he found out about it and said, Joy, you know, am I boring? Am I, you know, what am I not interested enough? I said, no, you're not really. I want to go make a movie. I don't want to make a musical. I'm not interested in this stuff. You know, stick with me and you know, I'll give you. You have to come up with one good idea a day, and so we bonded over that. And he didn't like Hollywood either.
You had to come up with one good idea a day.
Yeah.
What does that mean? One good idea for what the way he should be shooting is something he should be shooting that day?
The thing of
that seems like very light work.
I was very much involved in camera and editing. He was very much involved in screenwriting and working with actors.
What year are you talking here?
This is 1967.
Have you worked professionally at this point?
No. This is right. I had one semester at graduate school. I took off in the summer to do these scholarships, but then I never came back. So what I did is, Francis said, you know, I'm from San Francisco, so he said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to go to San Francisco, go home, and make experimental films, and maybe do some documentaries. You know, make a living doing documentaries and then do experimental films. He said, you know, I don't like Hollywood either, you know, we don't. So we again bonded over that. In fact, we really didn't want to work in the Hollywood industry. So we did a film called The Ring People, which we went all across the country. It's only 12 of us. Ended up in Oklahoma, Nebraska, in a warehouse. We made movies. You know, we don't have to go back on. You don't have to make movies in Hollywood. This is the core part. You don't have to make movies in Hollywood. So we just simply said, well, why don't we go back? And I said, why don't we go to San Francisco and start there, do a studio and everything. So we did. We moved to San Francisco. We started American Zoetrope, and when Warner's got bought again, this time by the Kinney Corporation, which is a company's own parking lots, Francis did his magic, you know, which is the days the guys walked on the lot with the executives. He said, we're in the middle of making a movie here. You know, we need to go ahead and we need the money. You know, get with it. Either shit or get off the pot. And a telegram. And they said,
wait, when a telegram?
What is this? Yeah, what is this?
Shit or get off the pot, stop.
What is this? What's Francis doing? So out of that, I got my first film off the ground, which was a feature version of THX, which was still an experimental film, but it was as far as I could push it toward a theatrical film. And we did a bunch of scripts, and then we presented it to them. We said, we're going to be this is after Easy Record. We're going to be the new young people studio. We're going to be in San Francisco. We're going to make new avant-garde movies and all that kind of stuff. So we sent them the scripts, we sent them the film. They looked at the film and they said, we want our money back. And so basically, Zoetrope went bankrupt. I said, well, what are we going to do, Francis? I said, they made him sort of pay all the money back that they put into development.
No, seriously, the movie, they made him pay back the money to make the movie?
No. Oh. But we wanted to not the movie.
Isn't that what you just said?
Not the movie, but the script.
The scripts, the development?
The scripts that we developed, there were 7 of them. Conversation was one, Apocalypse Now was one. You know, we had a bunch of scripts. And they said, well, we don't want to pay for this development now. We want you to pay us back. It was like $350,000, but to us it was like more money than God.
Still a lot of
money. So I said, look, Frank, I can't get a job. I'm not going to be able to pay you this back. You're going to have to do it because you actually have some credibility in it. You can get a job. And well, they've offered me this movie. It's based on a kind of pop book. You know, it's kind of not very good. But it's about Italians, and I like Italians. And add a lot of spaghetti scenes to it, and make something out of it.
Right.
But it's a movie that they were going to start Kirk Douglas and Robert Redford. And so he went off to fight that war, and it was a war that he fought incredibly, every single day was one thing or another that were trying to turn it into the wrong direction, and he slogged up Mount Everest with that, came up with The Godfather, and when he left, when we split up at that point, not really left, he went to New York here, he said, look, do me a favor. No more of these experimental science fiction robot movies. I dare you to do a comedy. I said, I can do a comedy. I can do anything. He said, well, I don't think you can do it. I said, okay, I'll show you. So while he was off doing The Godfather, I was writing American Graffiti. And
As a dare. So you wrote one of the greatest comedies of the last 70 years as a dare, and he did perhaps the greatest film of the 20th century, just pinched it out as like a favor. Yeah, exactly. It was a day job, but Godfather.
I don't want to work for a studio. I don't want to do other people's material. I want to write original screenplays. This is the last thing in the world I want to do with my life. I said, well, what choice do we have here? You know? And I had spent 2 years and he did the film. I spent 2 years trying to get American Graffiti off the ground. Finally, we kind of got there was a whole thing in the industry about young movies and all studios, you know, they follow the pattern. Well, we're going to do young movies, young people movies. And
what do you think they meant by young movies at the time? When they said young movies?
Easy Rider was the classic. That's what everybody wanted to do, Easy Rider. So they set up these little production companies and, distribution companies. And, you know, I was at the tail end of Universal on one of those things. They'd done the Two-Lane Blacktop and they'd done a bunch of movies. And they said, look, we will do this movie. I first did it at United Artists, and then I went to Universal. And, I'm sorry. I went to every single studio twice. And
with American Graffiti?
With the script done. And they said, we don't want it, we don't want it, we don't want it, we don't want it. Finally, Universal said, look, if you can get a name attached to this, we'll do it. If it doesn't cost anything. So, at this time, Francis was just coming off The Godfather, and he was like the anointed god of cinema. And so I said, Francis, can you help me get this movie off the ground? He said, sure. So he became an executive producer, and so it was good that he did The Godfather, because otherwise I'd have never gotten it off the ground.
Was there anybody in that cast who was a name? Ron Howard, I guess, was
he was a big movie star. No, this was the first.
It was Opie. Everybody loved him.
Yeah, this was the first. Well, he was the little kid. Yeah, he was Opie.
Yeah.
So he had never done a movie. He was 18. He had never done a movie without. This was his first adult movie, so he didn't have teachers. He wasn't being, squired around by adults.
Well, speaking of American Graffiti, there's a moment when Suzanne Suburbs Thunderbird is about to pull away, right? And the license plate is THX1138?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a legend that that's in every movie you've made. That there's somewhere there's either THX or 1138, and it's kind of like, is that like a boom to like your early experimental feature not getting off or not being?
No. It was. They didn't like the film. They didn't like the film. THX. They said, we're going to fix it. I said, how are you going to fix this thing? It does not make any sense. There's nothing you can do to make it better.
That's the defense. That's your defense of your own work.
Well, it's like
it's an unpolishable turd. Now distribute it.
I said, but it's like you do the film and you say, this film is designed to be this way. There's nothing you can do. It's not too long. It's not done badly. It's an experimental film. It's purposely done this way. They said, well, we're going to make it shorter, we're going to do all this stuff. So they cut 5 minutes out. I said, did that really make any difference? Really? I said, it doesn't make the film any better. Well, we did it because we can. I said, well, that's not a very good reason. So anyway, I did American Graffiti. When I did American Graffiti, we showed it at the studio. And we showed it to an audience kind of like this, up in San Francisco. Just people we found in supermarkets and shopping malls and everything. They were completely, and
you Shanghai people, okay?
And we saw it, and it was like 10 o'clock in the morning, and I brought the head of the studio in, And I said, okay, we'll show you. I didn't want to show it to him so he could sit in the room by himself. That's like death. And so we showed him the movie, and it's kind of a famous moment in cinema history because the audience went berserk. I mean, it was so over the top that in the end, the studio executive said, well, this film doesn't fit to show an audience. And I said, what do you mean? Did you hear the audience? You planted this audience. Nobody reacts to a movie like that. I've never seen that in my whole career. So you planted these people, and I think the film doesn't fit to show an audience. And that's when Francis came up. We were in the back of the theater, like right over there where you exit. And Francis said, you should get down on your knees and thank this kid. He worked 24 hours a day. I did this thing, and we're less than $700,000. This is, no matter what you think, you should at least just thank him for making it. And he said, the studio executive, well, look, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, because he just finished The Godfather. He said, here, I'm going to write a check. And I know it costs sort of $700, but I'll give you $1 million for the movie right now. Yeah, well, no, I don't know. But then they still cut out 5 minutes. But I was really pissed about it. And this time, because Francis didn't intervene on THX, he was doing something else.
He didn't.
So I made him intervene on this one.
He didn't like THX? Because he
No, he liked it.
He said you don't do this experimental robot stuff anymore, though.
Well, he told me not to do that again, but then I did do it.
Read between the lines.
Yeah, but I did do it again, and I showed him. So, but, it was one of those things where, the studios would take it and cut 5 minutes of it because they could. They didn't make it better. And it was, again, very upsetting. So
Did you get to put it back in? The 5 minutes? What did they take?
When I did Star Wars, I went back to Warner Brothers and Universal, and I said, this was before VHS or any ancillary market stuff. And I said, you put that 5 minutes back in. And I took it and I redid it and I put it back in, and it was the way I wanted it to be. And then they started having VHS and everything. So now the only versions of those movies that are left are the ones that are been fixed. And are the way I wanted it to be in the first place. So
Original director's cut.
And then I decided to go on and start my own studio, and because I didn't want those people ever to tell me and give me a bad time again. So
before we get to Star Wars, if we get to Star Wars.
That's still controversial.
I want to explain to you my experience with Star Wars, really quickly, okay? I won 2 tickets to a local radio station in Charleston, South Carolina, which for some reason was like a test market or something. We had it like 2 weeks or something, or 3 weeks before the national opening.
That was promotional.
Promotional. It was in Charleston, South Carolina, like the Ultravision or something like that. And I won it from WTMA. And I had 4 tickets, and none of us could drive because we were 13, so Haskell Fudenberg's mom drove. And fell asleep, by the way, because the lights were too flashy. And we sat there in the darkened theater having no idea what this thing was going to be. And as soon as ba-dun, came on and Star Wars appeared, we knew that everything was different. From the moment that those words appeared on screen, and then the scroll came, and when the whole thing was over, we got to school on Monday, because it was like a Saturday night, we couldn't explain to anyone how the world was different now. There was no way to convey what a fresh, representation of what, a sci-fi battles were, or what a space epic was. There wasn't a word for that, for us. We had no vocabulary for what you showed us. What do you think the biggest change was? And you can, go back to the genesis of it if you want to ramp up to it. But other than the fact that they're sort of crenellated surfaces of these spaceships, these weren't silver needles that we saw like from Buck Rogers, on the old, two-reelers. What do you think the biggest change you made in presenting a space, like a space movie or a science fiction movie?
That gets into a big subject, but I'll try to make it really small. The thing about art is that it's based on technology. If you go to the first caveman and picked up a stick from the fire and start drawing on a cave, that's technology. Only humans can do that. You can teach an ape to do it, but he won't do it on his own. And if you say, draw something that is emotionally and spiritually significant to us, the clan, nobody but humans can do that. humans are the only ones that can actually transfer emotion from a work of art to other people that come and feel the same thing. So as you go through it, when you get to film, at that point, and again, I was still, and even my movie American Graffiti and TJ are still sort of vaguely experimental in the fact that they're very cinematic. It's all based on the art of movement. So when you get to Star Wars, it's really a silent movie. And it really lies in the world of movement. And in order to move in space, the greatest science fiction film ever made using the old technology was 2001. But you couldn't pan. You couldn't, the ships just sort of go through very slowly. And the panning can be very, very slow to make it work. But I wanted something that was fast and kinetic. It had very short cuts. He had cuts that are, 643 frames. I wanted cuts that were 12 frames. And in order to do that, to get the foregrounds and the backgrounds to line up and to figure out a way of actually creating pans in space, we spent a lot of time, developed a lot of new technology, just so I could do that, just so I could make it be kinetic. And the thing about Star Wars is, it is kinetic. It's like a silent movie. You can be 2 years old and not understand anything that's being said, but you understand the movie. And we discovered that, or you could be 85 years old and not understand the movie, but still understand the movie.
Do you think that's necessary for a great movie, that you still understand the emotion with the sound off?
No. I believe half a movie is the sound. So the sound is extremely important, but the dialogue is not. That's not where the issue is. And of course,
you know how Chewbacca
I'm famous for being.
You know how Chewbacca feels, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
I have a lot of, I'm notorious for wooden dialogue, but at the same time,
I wouldn't say
wooden. It's like dialogue is part of the
carved dialogue, George.
Huh?
It's not wooden, it's hand-carved dialogue.
Yeah. It's like, here comes another one. But, you got to say that, because otherwise, how do you But what it does is it's part of the soundtrack. It's like singing. Obviously you can do it a cappella, and you can, it's beautiful, but ultimately when you have a big symphony orchestra, and you have a lot of stuff, and the singing is in there, the choir and everything, it's all one big soundtrack. And in movies, you've got a lot of stuff with sound effects. I'm a big fan of sound effects. THX is almost all sound effects, and American Graffiti is too, as a matter of fact. We have it scored with songs from the period. And when I went to make the movie, well, you can't do that. Nobody's ever done that. You need a score. You need to get a composer. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do it I have 70 songs.
Was that the first sort of like hit album that went along with the movie, the American Graffiti soundtrack?
No, they had, soundtrack, it was Sound of Music and stuff, but they sold 3 copies of that. But the real issue was ultimately that, a little sideline with the studio, they didn't want to release the film. So what we did was every time, and they were going to actually shelve it and then maybe do it as a TV movie. So we got a call and said, can we show the movie to the TV department? I said, sure. So they have a studio, they have like little screening rooms that have like 25 people in it. And they have big screening rooms like this, with like 500 people in it. So we would always book the big room, and we would invite anybody at the studio, anybody knew to come to these screenings. So the TV department went in and sat with a whole bunch of real people, and obviously they all went berserk. And they all sort of started scratching their heads and going, why aren't they releasing this movie? What's going on here? And so they went to the marketing department and said, you should maybe see that movie. Because the executives upstairs didn't know anything.
Why do you think that they weren't going to release it? Did they just not like you? Like, what was...
They didn't like the movie. The executive did not like the movie, and he said, I don't like this movie, we're not going to release it.
Because it had that devil's rock and roll in it? Why do you...
Yeah, it had everything. It's like, So, this is, there is a world out there called the creative industrial complex, which means the industrial part of it rules everything, and they kind of screw around with the creative people. And it's
I
not,
wouldn't understand that.
and it's
at all.
not perfect. Yeah, you face that too. It's just like, you kind of say, look, guys, get a brain. And to think that you know how to do this is very, very, it's just full of hubris. It's not real.
I've heard, I'm not sure if it's a true story, but that there's, I can't remember the person's name, that's how uninformative this story is going to be. But that like one of the greatest lessons you can learn in Hollywood is nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
That only you know what you're capable of and only you have a vision in your head.
Well, again, there's two worlds. There's the industrial world, the corporate world, and they are not creative. They're lawyers, they're accountants. They think they're creative. They love to go around, oh, I made this movie, I made that movie, oh yeah, I did this, and and they refer to it as their movie when they don't have anything to do with it other than saying, okay, make that movie. They said, but that's the most important part. And I said, well, it's not really. You know, the guy that actually sweats blood and tears and actually writes it and directs it and everything is the one who makes the movie. But they don't see it that way at all. And I did that on Star Wars, which was, you know, I had a great time at 20th Century Fox. Al Ladd Jr. was the one who stood up for the film, he was the head of the studio and everything. And the board of directors didn't want him to make the movie. And in those days, Fox was sort of about to go bankrupt. So this is going to be my second season that I helped go bankrupt. But they fought him tooth and nail on the whole thing. But he said, George, I want you to do this. I don't understand the script. I don't understand what you're doing, but you're a talented guy, and I want you to do this. That doesn't happen. That is like such a that's what should happen. That's what should happen in every movie. But it didn't happen. And the board didn't like the movie, and
Wait,
they were gonna.
They didn't like Star Wars?
Yeah, we showed at the end. They showed up to the. I don't like this. They went to the mixing studio. You know, there was like I don't know how many. There were like maybe 20 of them. And
so they moved stuff with their
of course,
mind?
Why
does the kid move stuff with his mind? Why doesn't he just grab it?
Afterwards, of course, a bunch of the board. Oh, George, hey, so I was the only one that stood up for you at that board meeting. I liked the movie, but at that time,
I don't get it. Why is the tall black guy got asthma?
Yeah.
Kids don't like that. Next, thanks.
Yeah, well, that's the same
George,
thing.
right?
Thanks, George. It was the same thing we were doing. Steve and I were doing Indiana Jones. He had finished Close Encounters. He wanted to do a sequel to it, so he started doing this sequel. He turned it over to the studio. They read it. Columbia to do a sequel to it. And they said, we're not going to do this. And we were out in the middle of the Sahara Desert shooting. I said, why? Why are they not going to do this? That's a perfect, this sequel is great. It's called E.T. It's about a little guy. They're not going to do a children's film. They did their market research and they discovered that children's. And Star Wars is a children's film. Those are the ones that make all the money. Wake up. But, you finally got it done. But it's one of those things they don't really understand. But it's going back to the 20th Century Fox thing. When it came to The Empire Strikes Back, I'd given them a hard time in the deal, and got little things that weren't worth anything at the time.
Such as?
Well, I had 3 films, and I wanted to have sequel rights. Not because I thought it was going to be successful, but because I thought it was going to be unsuccessful. Because I've only done, I never thought I thought American Graffiti was it, and I'll never do that again. So I said,
the younger people here who don't know, American Graffiti was an enormous hit.
Yeah.
Like unprecedented, in the 80s, like Ghostbusters. You couldn't think a comedy could be that big.
Well, it was the most successful movie of all time at that point because it only cost like $700,000 and it made over $100 million. Now you have a few other films that accomplished that, but at the time, for return on the investment, it was beyond anything. But at the same time, when, and I had a good time at Fox, but I said, I'm not going to go through this anymore. I'm going to do one thing you should never do. Never invest in a movie. In the movie business, we call those people suckers. And because they'll never take your money out, ever. And we've gone through Colombian drug lords and dentists. And, now we're on.
That's very fun in line, George.
Now we're on hedge fund managers.
You're on what, hedge fund managers?
No, you can easily get them to invest in a movie because they, I don't know, I guess they want to impress their girlfriend or something.
And you don't have to pay them back?
Well, you can't if you don't. I mean, the movies don't make any money. Movies is not a way to make money. Let's put it that way. So, it's not like television. So I said to this laddie, in the first one we did Star Wars, I was sitting in his office and I said, you know, I got half this movie. And I know what I'm doing for my half. You know, I'm spending 3 years of my life, I'm working my heart out, my whole career is at stake. You know, I'm killing myself, and I'm writing, directing, doing all stuff. And I know what I do for my half. What do you do for your half? He said, well, we finance the movie. I said, that's it? He said, yeah. I said, you don't really finance the movie. All you do is write a letter to the bank and say, here, give the kids some money. All you do is give them a letter of credit. He said, well, that's the way it works. So when I came back on Empire Strikes Back, and I had the sequel rights, and they said, okay, well now let's make a deal for, you know, we're going to do this and everything. I said, well look, this is the way it works. I get my 50%, but now I'm going to finance it, so I get your 50% too. So I have 100% of the movie now. And that's how I got to be rich. But again, it was just purely because I believed in it so much.
Write down, I'm going to write that.
But I believed in it.
Everything of the most successful franchise.
Well, there were no franchises in those days. You know, kind of the 80s.
Right.
But, you know, it's James Bond. But those were like, nobody thought about it as you could do things like that. So they didn't care, and they didn't think the film was going to be successful. I didn't think the film was going to be successful. So it was all,
At a certain point,
it was all in
you
defense.
must have thought at a certain point. When did you say to yourself, I really got something here?
No.
No?
I showed it to all my friends early on, but it was mostly stock footage from old war movies and all kinds of stuff. And I showed it to my friends Stephen, Brian McCullough, Marty, you know, I had a giant group there, like maybe 20 people. Yeah. They saw it and
Poor George.
what were you thinking? And Stephen jumped up and said, this is going to be the biggest movie of all time. And of course, everybody looked at Stephen and said, poor Stephen.
Drinking the Kool-Aid.
But they're really good friends of mine. So, you know, Brian sat down and said, well, you got to fix that. Well, first thing Brian said is, what the hell is a fourth? What is that fourth? So I said, look, Brian, it's not one of your movies. And he said, okay, look,
There aren't enough Italians.
you got to first of all get that 45-minute roll up at the beginning. You got to get that cut down to a reasonable length. I'll help you do it. So we sat and we rewrote the thing, and so they all helped me, but they didn't have any faith in it either. And the studio didn't have it. The board didn't have any faith in it. Nobody did. And even when we showed it, it did the American Graffiti screen, and everybody loved it. And then I was mixing at night to try to. We had a stereo version in the beginning. It came out in 32 theaters, but it was all in 70mm stereo, and it was really great. But I was finishing the monaural version at night because they wouldn't let me into a studio during the day. And so I was doing that, and the night it opened, I was mixing the movie, and I was going to leave the next day to go to Hawaii. And Laddie called me and said, it's a fantastic hit, every single thing, the lines, blah, 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 we can't believe this. I said, Laddie, calm down. It's a science fiction film. Science fiction films, you get this little group of sci-fi fans. They'll come to anything in the first week. So wait for a couple of weeks and you'll see what it's really going to do. Because that's the first week. I had a great first week on THX, you know, and it made 10 cents. So I said, just wait. So I went off to Hawaii, and then.
So let me just go back for a second. You had a completed Star Wars, and you went, I don't know.
Well, nobody liked it. And it hadn't been shown to the real audience. And then they called and said, oh, it's a big hit. But then I said, well, look, let's just not get too excited here.
Did you ask any 13-year-old boys? Because
well,
I'm telling you, from
I
the moment the title came on the screen, everything, it was an absolute electric experience. I'm not breaking any news here. That Star Wars was exciting.
You were a very impressionable.
But when it was over, I was a weak-minded individual. But when it was over, in the line to go in, we got two things. We got these. First, they distributed tickets that had these blue tickets that had printed in darker blue all the information with a few stars on it, and maybe a little breakdown of the poster with the cyber and all that kind of stuff. And then there was a button that said, "May the Force be with you," which I still have in my workroom at home. And it was so good that we all marched back out and said, "Can we have those blue tickets back?" Because we thought, we're going to want those for the rest of our lives. And they said, "No, kid, we tore them." Right. Oh.
Well,
George, can I get one of those blue tickets? Anybody has one?
they didn't give me one.
Oh, boy.
But what I did was, I was working all night. I finished the mix that morning, first thing in the morning. I got on a plane, flew to Hawaii, which is what I do on my other movies.
I do it too.
I don't read the reviews, I don't do anything. I just go and lay on a beach. It's great. Steven was there, some other friends of mine were there, and we just vegetated. And I got a call from Laddie about a week in, but after the first week, it was really like in the middle of the week. And he called and said, "George, turn on the news." I said, "What?" He said, "Turn on CBS. Turn on the news. Walter Cronkite." You know, so I was in Hawaii. He said, "You gotta see it." What is it now? So I turned on the news and they did this huge story on the sensation of Star Wars and the lines around the block.
Covered Time
everybody was going berserk about it. That's the first time I understood that it was a big hit.
Yeah.
It was like a week or two into the run.
It was a big hit, George. I know we've got some people who really want to ask you some questions. We have been talking longer than we should have. Are you okay with taking a few questions?
Yeah.
Okay. How about, I saw this young lady right there first. Speak loudly because there are no mics. Or there is a mic. The young man, the nice young man with the mic.
Hi, how are you? My name is Rochelle. I'd like to ask you what the best compliment is and the best constructive criticism you've ever received.
Okay, in case you didn't hear, the best compliment, the best compliment you've received, and the best constructive criticism you can give or receive. Receive. The best constructive criticism and the best compliment you've received.
Well, constructive criticism comes from, like, my friends, who I respect. They're professional filmmakers. They can actually say something that is actually worthwhile. I could use it and make things better. Obviously with movies, like a lot of other things, you have a lot of critics, and they say whatever they want to. It used to be just a big deal. You say, well, critics are just like regular people. They're like nobody more than anybody else. But now you've got blogs and everything where you just have a lot of regular people. So there's not, you know, and art is in the eye of the beholder. So if you don't like something, what's the point in going around and trashing it? And, you know, in Europe, France especially, they don't do bad reviews. They only do good reviews. Bad reviews, they just don't say anything. So nobody talks about it. And they only talk about the good films. I think it's a much better system.
Really?
But,
yeah, aren't really scathing reviews of films.
No, they
just ignore them.
They just ignore them, which is what you do with bad films. You know, you ignore them. You don't have to get all worked up and go crazy.
And they just kind of disappear.
Yeah. They go,
It's like articles you don't click on
but
BuzzFeed.
then they come up with
At the bottom of the internet.
yeah, but what happens is, like everything else, like zombies, they sort of float up to the surface of the lake. And then they become a cult classic. That's what THX is, a cult classic. It's floating on the lake as a zombie. But there's a small group of people that would...
Best compliment then. Also, best compliment.
Yeah, cult classic is a compliment means you made an interesting movie or a weird movie. And there's a small group of people that love it. So, what's that?
That's the best compliment you think you can get, is that if something you do becomes a cult classic, it means that a small group of people liking something odd is maybe the best thing you could do.
Yeah. THX.
You've been a failure, George.
Yeah.
A lot of people like a lot of what you do.
No. Most of the films I've made, mostly produced, the ones I've directed have done already, except maybe THX, but it's a cult classic. But most of them I've produced, and I've done for friends of mine as favors to help them and do it, and I've done a lot of that. Unfortunately, many of those have not been successful, and but even Howard the Duck is a cult classic. I expect
The first Marvel movie was the first Marvel comic movie.
I have a feeling that Marvel's going to redo it because with the technology we have today. I mean, I told the producer and writer and everything. I said, "You can't. This won't work." And but George, you're our best friend, and we work for you, and you gotta help us do this. I said, "Okay, but it's not going to work. You can't put a dwarf in a duck suit and make it work."
They said it couldn't be done, and they were right. Well, Howard shows up as an Easter egg in Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's a digital duck, and when you have a digital duck, you can do anything, and you can make it act.
Right, that's young.
Yeah, very hard.
This young man right there, yes. Yell and I'll translate it.
Steven, many roles in your career. A writer, a producer, an actor, sort of commentator.
Yep.
Have you ever thought of following the trend on Stewart?
Oh, he asked me a question about me, and I'm here for George. So thank you.
You can answer that.
I do not wish to become a film director, but thank you for asking me that question. I'm flattered you would ask me a question.
Sure.
You asked me a question?
Now that the world has changed in the way that it has,
How has the world changed? Oh, because that changed the world.
yes,
Okay.
that don't you think the perfect choice to replace that Jon Stewart fellow would have been you? And now you're working at late night where nobody sees you because it's who stays up at 1 o'clock in the morning? Wouldn't you just say, "I'm taking over the crown and I'm gonna"?
Yes, I can. I love it when people say, "Why are you taking over? Why are you going into late night?" I was at 11:30. I'm moving to 11:35. Yes, I'll drink a cup of coffee and stay up 5 minutes later. And listen. Trevor Noah is a very funny guy. I don't want to be the guy to take over for Jon Stewart. I worked for Jon Stewart at that show. My memories will always be of him being the keenest, most intelligent, most beautifully deconstructive mind, the clearest thinker I've ever worked with or for. And I just don't want to, I would never, however successful I be, get underneath his shadow. For me, someone who doesn't know him as well and maybe doesn't love us as much, might have a better time on that show than I ever would.
You don't have to be under a shadow, you just, he gets down there and you start jumping on his body and saying, "I won! I won! I won!"
All right, sure. I'll try that. Yes.
I was just curious. You were talking about how earlier on in your career you were really focused on making experimental films, and since you sold Star Wars to Disney, I was curious if you were eager to return back to making experimental movies.
Let me tell the people who didn't hear that. Since now other people are making the Star Wars films, are you interested in going back to experimental films of your youth?
That is exactly what I'm doing. Because, again, I'm tired of all my friends, all those people who say, "Well, George, when are you going to go back to experimental films? You keep saying you're going to do this. When are you going to do it?" Well, I keep getting these opportunities. I kind of have to do it. Well, I want to see your experimental films. I don't, why are you doing this? And so, and I have always wanted to do it. That's why I keep saying that. Well, after I finish this, I'll do it. After I finish Star Wars, then I'll do it. Well, then I had to continue it. It was successful. So, when you make experimental films, you have a choice. And most of my friends who are in experimental films, they scrape together money from their families, from, little kids that are selling cookies and everything. They get this money and they make a movie, for $1,500 or $2,000 or even more. And of course it doesn't go anywhere, there's no place to see it. But that's the way it works. The other way to do it is to become very rich. Take the money that I saved. A lot of my friends have yachts. I don't have a yacht. I said, and they said, buy a yacht, George, buy a yacht. Build one, it's going to be great, you gotta do it. I said, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the money that I would use to build the yacht, and I'm going to put it in a vault, and I am just going to waste it making movies that'll never make any money, which may never even be released, because the whole key to an experimental film is you don't know what's going to happen. And that's the allure of doing it, is because in the movie business, it has to work. You cannot screw around and do things that don't, you know aren't going to work. And I've done some of those movies. I produced some films, Paul Quatsi, some Japanese films, and it's great, but I got a studio to pay for it. I found some suckers and it was a studio. But for my stuff, I said, I'm not going to really do that. I'm not going to take advantage like that. I'm just going to make my own movies. I don't have to answer to anybody. I'm just going to make what I think might be the interesting project. You can do it in all the other arts, but you can't do it in movies because movies are so expensive. But now, with digital technology and that sort of thing, it's lowered the price way down. It's made it much easier for people to experiment. And with the internet, you have a place to show a niche thing where you can have a cult classic that only has 12 people that like it. So,
All right. And yes.
yeah.
How about a question for the man who's leaving? Yeah. Go ahead and yell. I'll translate it.
Hi. What is your hope for the new Star Wars movies going forward now that they're not in your creative control anymore?
What are your hopes for the new Star Wars movies? What is your a new hope for the new Star Wars movies? As they clearly are headed to a new franchise.
Well, I hope it's successful. I hope they do a great job. They've, the original saga was about the father, the children, and the grandchildren. And that's not a secret to anybody. It's even in the novels and everything. And the children were in their 20s and everything, so it wasn't Phantom yet. But so I'm hoping, and they've taken it in a different direction, and I'm excited to see. Since I didn't use my stories, I have no idea what they're doing.
Have you looked at any of the teaser trailers?
I have seen the first one, the other one that came out today. I just saw what was on CBS, but I'm going to try to look at it. I want to see it on the big screen. So, then they're not going to do it. Yeah, I'm going to take my little iPhone and plug it into my giant.
How do you feel that people watch movies on phones? How does this make you feel that I could watch your greatest achievements on?
Look, I know people that get apoplectic about it. So, oh God, it's got to be on a giant screen. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. I said, look, I make movies for the big screen. That's what I do, and they work best on the big screen. If you want the full experience, you see it in a good theater with a good sound system, with a lot of people, and it works the best there. If you want to see it on a cell phone, that's fine with me. You just don't get the same experience. And you can't sort of tell people where to watch movies, especially in the future. So you just have to accept the fact that people are going to look at it however they. Toward the end, with television and all of that, and the ancillary market, I said, well, why don't you make it so that it's more friendly to the ancillary market over TV screens? I'm not going to do that. If you want to see it really well and have the full experience, you got to go see it in the theater. But you can buy the DVD, you can do it that way, that's fine. It's just not the
You
same.
certainly have put out enough versions of your movies to buy them. I think I've got 6 different DVD versions of your movies.
Yeah, well, everybody says, I only changed it once. That was for the special edition. And mostly it was technological.
Did you, how technological, are there things in your movies that you still at this point go, I wish I had changed that?
No.
Nothing in American Graffiti, nothing in THX?
I did. I went back and put the stuff back in American Graffiti. I just wanted the films to be
You don't want to put in the CGI Jabba the Hutt into American Graffiti?
Again, the Jabba the Hutt was supposed to be a stop-motion Jabba the Hutt. It was planned. Here we had a guy standing in for Jabba the Hutt and everything. But when it came down to the crunch, and we were in serious, there's a whole drama around the finishing the movie, but we were in a serious problem at ILM about getting things done. I just had to cut the job of the hunt scene out. We just could not afford to do it. Because it was stop motion, it was a whole different thing, and we'd have to build a whole set and do all this kind of stuff. So I just said, okay, I'm not going to kill you guys. I'll come close, but I'm not going to actually kill you. So we won't worry about that. But I always wanted to be in the movie, but we just didn't. You know, you have to make a lot of sacrifices when you're making a movie. Some of them for, you know, length and it just doesn't work, and I love that scene, but you can't have it. And some for finance, you just don't have the money to do it. Some for time, you don't have enough time to do it. So I figured, you know, after the film was a success, all the film was a success, and they were going to come out with a special edition, which was just a cleaner version of the movie. I said, look, I want to fix some things, because we have a lot of bad visual effects in some of the movies, for their reason. We like it, it's funky. You know, well, as the guy who made the movie, I don't really like funky stuff. I like it to look good. So, and who cares whether, really? I don't like seeing matte lines, and if I can get rid of the matte lines, then I'll get rid of them, so it looks more interesting. Because those matte lines are going to become more disturbing as time goes on. Most people don't know what a bad movie looks like with matte lines and bad compositing and that sort of stuff. And I put the you know, Job of the Hunt scene back in, because I wanted that to be in there. I wanted all the things that I wanted to do, but I had to give up. You know, a little more than just you cut and you're in Mos Eisley, you drive up to the bar and that's it. I wanted to have a little driving through the crazy place and all that.
Creatures.
Yeah, creatures and all that kind of stuff to set that up. So I did all that stuff.
I think we have time for one more question. You pick, you young lady. You've got the mic, you've got all the power. Okay, great. That way, all the other people who had their hands up hate you, not me.
Hi, my name is Mike Manley. I am 21 years old. And when I was very young, my grandfather gave me a book, a black book, moleskin book, to write stories in. And I've been doing that ever since. And I have 10 books filled with ideas and stories. He recently passed, and I've still been trying to do it. And basically, you know, why I'm really here is to see if I could help you in any way.
That's good.
This young man, in case you didn't catch all of that, this young man, since he was quite young, he's 21, his grandfather or father? Grandfather gave him like basically a journal. He's got 10 of these journals filled with stories. He doesn't really know what to do with them. And he's wondering whether he could help you. Because he's got nothing but ideas, but not $1 billion.
I just am, all I want is like ideas. I don't
That's what the studios are for. They're the suckers. You get them to do it. I'm retired. I do my own little movies, but they're probably never going to be released. So, you know, I'm just screwing around in my garage doing things that I want to do, and maybe showing some of my friends someday when they would have a good laugh.
I can translate that. Go to Hollywood and suffer. Well, George Lucas, thank you so much. I want to ask you one last question of my own. You did a experimental film when you were younger called If Anyone Lived in a Pretty How Town.
Yeah.
Okay, based on E.E. Cummings' poem.
Right.
Why'd you pick that poem? Was it a short film?
That's short. It was a little short in school.
What does that poem mean to you? Because I think of Cummings in the spring, and here we are with the flowers just coming out. Why did you pick that poem?
Well, it was a contrast between the gray corporate industrial reality and beauty and love, and you know how it gets sometimes love gets stuffed out by the non I lost the word there, but people that care about love.
Well, George, thank you for choosing love and beauty. You've made our lives better. Thank you so much.